Hello, everybody. Tim Hughes here. I'm the CEO and co-founder of DLA Ignite. By the powers of the sophisticated technology, I'm talking to Steve Hall, who is in Australia.
Well, the technology may be sophisticated, but I wish I was too.
So, Steve, where can people find you? Where's the best place? Is it LinkedIn? Or?
Yeah, all my contact details are on LinkedIn. My name, tag, whatever there is, Steve Hall Sydney, all one word. Just search on that, you'll find me very, very easily.
And so one of the things that we're going to talk about is how the Great Resignation is going to impact on sales.
I think it's already impacting on sales, and even before the Great Resignation, the turnover in sales was unacceptably high. I mean, the average tenure of a B2B salesperson is about 15 to 18 months, and the same for B2B sales managers. So even before the Great Resignation, the churn in salespeople was very high.
I've heard an awful lot of people saying that I'm going to use the word quit, where they've just walked away from sales roles through a whole bunch of reasons. I mean, what are you seeing in Australia?
Well, I think people are questioning why they're doing it, why they're in a profession that's high pressure, where they're likely to get the boot anyway, where they're expected to work ridiculous hours, and in many cases where they're expected to focus on KPIs that don't make any sense.
Yeah, one of the things that we're seeing is certainly from organizations, what they're doing is that they're going out and recruiting people is expensive because they're usually using headhunters to do it, or executive search. So in the UK, they're usually paying 30-40% of base for actually to recruit the person. The person comes in, they don't like it for some shape or form. The organization is also investing in the cost of onboarding them and training them, and then promptly the people leave.
And if they were there for any period of time, they take with them their relationships they've managed to build and the knowledge that they've developed, and potentially details of the prospects. I mean, let's face it, you can't just come into a sales opportunity, look at the CRM and take over. It's not that simple. Even if people filled in the CRM properly, which they don't.
Which they don't, but yeah. So we're in this situation with organizations where certainly what I'm seeing is that there's a need for organizations to understand more the sales process and to actually get some KPIs that at least the people can be measured on. I mean, what are you seeing, Steve?
I think we need a total reset. I think we are. I was reading a joke the other day in the Sydney Morning Herald about monks that were copying out the rules to live by, and one of them said, "Hey, we're copying from copies. Why don't we go back to the original and see if there's any mistakes?" And the abbot said, "Great idea." So then he starts crying, and the young monk says, "What's the problem?" He says, "Oh, it says celebrate, not celibate." And I think that we're continuing to do what doesn't work because we've always done what doesn't work, and I think we need to tear the entire thing up and start again.
And in what do you think that it should? What should we do in terms of starting again? Because I mean, one of the ways that sales is built on this notion about the way it always worked. Having SDRs and BDRs going out and calling is because you didn't want to distract the salespeople or the AEs, and so there's all of these things got built to build this Frankenstein organization.
Well, I think the SDRs and BDRs were a noble attempt to get specialists working in a particular area, but it was done in a flawed way. The idea is the account executive is the one with the font of all knowledge, so we'll use cheaper people that can do a lot more to get stuff to them, but they forgot the prospect. I mean, if you're a senior executive or a decision maker who presumably SDRs are calling, why do you want to have a horde of SDRs calling you that can't hold a business conversation with you to qualify you and see if you're an important enough fish to bother with? We forgot the prospect. The concept in some ways was good, get the right people doing the right job. They just didn't get the right people. I think of it this way. I thought of it this way last night in bed, actually, believe it or not. They tried to implement the Henry Ford production line model in sales when they should have been implementing the Formula One team-based model, where a team focuses on a fast performance car and everyone works together to make it go as fast as possible.
And so how do you see sales? Because I totally understand. So in terms of the Henry Ford model is to get loads of people to in a production line, whereas with Formula One, in effect, you get this team around this one car.
That's right, yeah, and what to see one of the there's a lot of myths. We live by myths. A lot of myths built up about sales. You know, it's a numbers game. It's a tough game. So you've got to have guts. You've got to hang in there. You've got to work harder than anybody else to succeed. And I mean, a lot of the people who came with that ethos were from America, where they have this sort of hard work ethos. And I'm all for hard work, but I'm not for continual, permanent hard work that stops you doing anything else, stops you thinking, stops you reflecting. So I think, one of the things I think we should do in sales is do a lot less. Everyone's trying to do more, send more emails, make more calls, have more prospects, have a bigger pipeline, and it's counterproductive. I think we should do a lot less, a lot better. And as in the Formula One example, you don't win a Formula One race by having 100 cars. You have one car that goes fast.
So and in terms of the sales model, I mean, what are you seeing in terms of? I mean, are you finding that people are just quitting and just like, well, are they quitting and going into another job in sales, or are they just quitting sales?
I think previously people were either quitting or being fired because they didn't make the numbers. Because you've got these, you've got this ridiculous expectation that someone can come on board and start closing deals within 3 days, maybe 3 months, or they quit. But I think they were trying to find jobs in sales. Now they're questioning, well, hang on, why am I in a profession where I'm expected to work 7 days a week and it's high risk and yeah, sure, the commission and the money can be really good, but how many salespeople make the commission, make their targets these days? And it's less than 50%, I believe. So I think they're starting to walk away from sales as well.
Yeah, I was reading an article recently about how I can't remember. I'd need to go and look to see how many full sales jobs there are in the States, but it was quite a lot. And the people that are applying to them aren't usually of an older age, and therefore there's an expectation. So the figures that I saw today was an expectation that most sales teams will be running at 30% less than capacity.
Yeah, I can quite believe that, and then of course everyone's competing for the same salespeople, and as you said, it's an incredibly expensive job, a situation where you keep losing salespeople, and it's bad for the customers. I mean, existing customers, where you've got account managers looking after them, they like a bit of continuity, and prospects like a bit of continuity too. If they've got a different person, if you're nurturing someone, if you know that they're going to buy something in a couple of years, and you want to keep sending them information. I'm not a huge fan of using electronic sheepdogs to herd prospects down a chute. If you're going to send them information, then it's nice if it comes from the same person occasionally, rather than a mishmash of people.
Yeah, I think that often we see. Yeah, I mean, I think that the modern prospects gets completely confused with all the different information coming from all the different sources.
Well, I think they just turn off. I mean, if you want a prospect to notice you, it's like being in a blizzard. If you're a snowflake in a blizzard, you don't get noticed, and there's a snowflake of communications going to prospects, and they just turn off. It's white noise or white snow. So if you want to be noticed, and noticed for the right reason, you don't want to be noticed because you're obnoxious and you're bothering people too much. If you want to be noticed for the right reason, you've got to stand out, and one way to stand out is to actually talk to the customers about what they individually and specifically care about, rather than what my marketing team told me I should talk about.
Yeah, we were talking recently with an organization about buyer journeys and how they'd done all this mapping and buyer journey mapping and stuff. And we pointed out that the journey, the buyer's journey map was actually based on my journey to try and sell you something, not actually on a buyer's journey to actually buy something. And it was like there was just this. They just didn't seem to understand that all this mapping out was, I want to sell you something, and therefore what I'm going to do is I'm going to find a way of doing that, and I'm just going to follow the trail to you, where I'm going to then present you with a brochure. At which point you'll say, I'm not interested in the brochure.
Yeah, well, the sales concept of the buyer's journey is often dramatically flawed. They don't understand when it starts. It's like if I was going to London and I decide that I'm going to drop off in Singapore and have a bit of a stay over there, and then I'm going to fly into London, and then my parents, when they were alive, lived in Hartlepool, so I was going to hire a car and drive to Hartlepool. It's like they're mapping the drive from Hartlepool, and they forget all about the stuff that happens beforehand. Because once you are looking for specific product or service, that's when people think the buyer's journey starts. But a hell of a lot happens long before that. What's the problem I'm trying to solve? What are the different ways we can solve it? Should we do it this way? Should we go that way? Let's go out and do some investigation. All that stuff happens before they say, okay, we need to buy an X.
Yeah, I mean, there's some sort of, if you think about, there's a meeting in an organization that says, we've got this problem and what are we going to do about it? And people will be sent out to understand what that is. And other people will do their own research. But at that point, they won't have said, we're going to buy a product.
Of course not. No, if your big problem is we're not selling enough, you can hire people, you can sack people, you can do a marketing campaign, you can reduce your prices, you can get rid of some products, you can focus on your existing customers. Not a million, but there's 1,000 different ways to sell more stuff. And if you happen to be selling sales training, only one of them is let's do some sales training. And if 95 prospects have got that problem and 94 of them decide sales training isn't the answer, then they never became opportunities. But they could have been, maybe, if you've been talking to them when they had the problem rather than when they were looking for a specific solution.
So what's your do you have a grand vision about what sales should look like?
Well, look, my favorite saying is it depends. It depends on what resources you've got. The way that, if you're SAP or Salesforce, the way you're going to approach the market is different if you're you and me. Because we have a lot less resources. But in terms where you have a reasonably large organization, I like teams. A team of someone with marketing expertise, or with like yourself, with social selling and online expertise. Someone who can actually pick up, who's good at picking up the phone, talking to people, understanding their situation, and talking to them as an intelligent person who knows their business. Someone who goes in and manages the sales process. So there's a whole heap of tasks that need to be done, and you need people who are good at doing them, who enjoy doing them, and who the prospect respects doing them. Now, one person may do several tasks, so who does what depends upon the resources you have available. But this pass the parcel from marketing to SDRs to account executives to technical support people for demonstrations just doesn't work. You need a team that gets together and say, okay, these are and the other thing is we need to target much more carefully. At the moment, the idea is, let's buy a list and let's target everyone in that list. And I bought a list once in 1994 of publishers in Australia. And I knew my company knew publishing really well because they specialized in publishers. And the list contained, all sorts of people in the newspaper. There's only about 1 in 8 was a valid prospect. And there was a whole heap of valid prospects that weren't in the list. So you need to identify who your ideal customer is. And then you need to identify the specific companies that are in there. And then what you end up with is a much smaller group of people where you've got a much better chance of getting through and actually selling something. And then once you've got that list, you need to strategize. Okay, these are our top 50 targets. How are we going to get in there? Who are the top people? How are we going to get their attention? What will get their attention? When we do get their attention, what do they care about? Not what do they conceptually care about. What do they actually in real life care about? So you need to do a bit of research to find out who your target should be. And then once you've got your targets, if winning a customer is worth $250,000 upwards, then it's worth doing a little bit of research. A lot of people say, we shouldn't do too much research because then we don't make the calls. Well, hey, get university students to do the research and get people who are good at talking to people to make the calls. It's not rocket science.
Yeah, I had an email from somebody where basically they said, we can help you set up and run a podcast. So I wrote back and said, well, that's very kind of you, but I've actually been running a podcast now for 4 years and interviewed some 200 people. And the salesperson wrote back and said, well, I never sent the email in the first place. The machine did.
Yeah, that's right. And it's, I mean, look, LinkedIn's becoming the new home of pork or spam, isn't it? Then people say, oh, artificial intelligence is going to take over sales, and artificial intelligence is in some ways going to screw up sales, or is screwing up sales. Now, there's a place for it. You can do fabulous research using AI, and you can get people's phone numbers and do all sorts of stuff. But if all you're using AI for is to do the same crap badly, but faster and more of it, all you're going to do is stop the people picking up the phones and looking at their emails. I mean, the first thing I do, well, I haven't done it yet because I just got up, but as soon as I go online today, the first thing I will do is delete about 103 emails without reading them.
Yeah.
And
go
on.
No, I was going to say, with AI always amuses us, because if you take social, the social has a philosophy, and the philosophy around social is that Steve Hall will turn up to social, and we will have and because I'm going to either sell something or I'm going to buy something. And that requires Tim Hughes to turn up to social and do exactly the same, or Jim Wolfe to turn up to social and do exactly the same. As soon as Steve Hall says, well, I ain't going to turn up, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to put a robot in place, the whole thing falls apart.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the more people that you have automating themselves, the more basically it becomes, it just doesn't work.
Yeah, well, it's the old snowflake in the blizzard analogy I used, or rainbow in you want to be a rainbow in a storm rather than the raindrop.
So good couple of good points there from Jim, where I mean, I get so much spam. Well, I get a lot of spam, but the thing is, we use Slack to run the business, so I actually don't get a lot of email. Whereas in my corporate life, I'd get, and this is not a boast, it's just the way corporate life was. I'd get 200 emails a day. You're spending your life basically trying to get rid of it all and dig yourself out of it, and then you're sending emails to people across the office rather than actually going and having a conversation with them.
You just delete you just delete them. They never.
So you just delete it, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, let's face it. Believe it or not, I mean, I'm not totally unintelligent. I have worked out the fact that having the word Steve in the heading doesn't necessarily mean it's from someone that I know, or having meeting doesn't mean it's a response to an email that I've sent. I've worked that one out by now.
Well, you got to remember that there are billions spent in marketing, in basically trying to manipulate your way to open the email, because marketers are being KPI'd on open rates, not on closed business. So what they'll do is that they'll manipulate you to open the email, at which point you go, you manipulative little, at which point you then delete the email anyway. So, but they get a KPI that you opened it. The fact that you deleted it.
Well, that takes us back full circle to stupid KPIs and silos, and the fact that if everyone's measured on different KPIs, everyone will do different things that don't join together. Whereas if you're a team and your KPI, and again, there's been a trend of you can't measure results, so therefore you've got to measure activities, and people come up with activities to measure. I mean, I'm reading a book by Michael Lewis on psychology, and we're really bad at using intuition. We're really bad at making decisions, and we're really bad at we're bad at so many things. But you need to work together as a team with shared objectives. And sure, you might have goals along the way, but open rates and number of calls made a day and things like that are just stupid KPIs.
So what else? Were you going to say something else? I butted in. Sorry about that.
No. That's what I was saying. My belief is we need to do a lot less, a lot more effectively to the right people, and we need to use the right people to do stuff that they at least are very good at doing and ideally enjoy doing. I mean, I'm working with a client at the moment, and I'm doing research that we've picked out The account executive up in Queensland picks out companies he thinks potentially might be prospects. I'm doing the research to see, look, they are or they're not potentially. We pass them on to a guy that's really good at talking to senior executives and making foot. And he's not only really good, he enjoys it. So everyone's doing stuff that they're good at and they're enjoying it. It's working really well. And I was going to say something else, but it keeps going out of my aging brain. Oh, that's right, emails. We talked about emails. I mean, there's a pretty easy way to get someone to open an email. Get a CEO to open an email. You call up the executive assistant. You say, oh, assume you can get the name and get through. And you say, oh, hello, George. I wanted to get a meeting with Fred or Mary. What's the best way to do that? And they say, oh, well, can you give me more details? I say, yeah, sure. Can I send you an email? And they open it. I mean, hey, that's not hard, and it works 60% of the time. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that's the only way to do it. And if you're going to do that, you've got to know what to put in the email, and you've got to know what they care about, and there's a whole heap of other stuff to go there. But just blasting out thousands or millions of emails because it's cheap, and if you say a 1% open rate is good, what you're doing is you're really pissing off 99% of people.
And yes, HubSpot reckon email marketing has a 98% failure rate.
Yeah,
and Seth Godin wrote a really good article recently saying, yeah, totally understand that that's a 2% success rate, but that's 98 people in 100 that you've pissed off.
Yeah, absolutely. And then of the ones that open it, how many of them do you piss off? And it doesn't take long before they never open the emails from you, and they get to recognize, oh God, not this lot again. Quickly, the other thing I was going to say is content marketing. People talk about content marketing and how important it is, and it is important to have good content. But practically speaking, there is much content out there. I mean, there are literally billions of pieces of content, and senior executives and decision makers don't spend their life trawling the internet looking for their content. So to me, content can be important in marketing, but it's much more important for credibility once you're talking to someone rather than as a way to get people to talk to you.
Yeah, content can be used in many different ways. And I agree with you that senior executives are not necessarily, but it's a great way to actually to engage with people and start conversations. But you got to remember,
if done properly, yeah.
Yeah, but you got to remember on something like LinkedIn, only 10% of people are actually posting content, and only 1% of people are using actually something like LinkedIn Live like this and using video.
Oh yeah,
so it's good to get actually first. Quite a small band. And the thing about content is you need to be insightful, you need to be educational, you need to be entertaining, etc., etc. Which is one of the reasons why I do this, which is for me, it's a great piece of content because I get interesting people like you, Steve.
Oh, absolutely. And the thing,
they talk and share, and that's what's good.
And the thing is, neither of us have tried to sell anything, have we? I'm not sure if I'm insightful or anything. But
well, in fact, I've actually got a whole load of stuff in the bag here that I'm going to try. No, I'm joking.
Well, that's okay. I've got some Swindon Town programs that might up in Harvard.
Oh, Swindon Town. Oh, but the great thing about Swindon, Steve, is the Magic Roundabout.
Oh yeah, I love the Magic Roundabout. It's but right next to it is the football ground, and that's the great thing about Swindon.
Swindon Town, yeah. So yeah. Where are Swindon Town at the moment?
We're about fourth in League Two.
Okay.
At the moment, which considering we were about to go out of business 6 months ago and only had 6 players, is not bad. But we got bought by an Australian plumber, a guy that owns they're the only football league club in England to be owned by an Australian, and I'm watching the game with him in a week and a half's time. So.
Oh, fantastic!
Yeah, as are a few other Swindon Town fans down here.
Right, brilliant, Steve. Thank you so much for coming on. I know it's what time is it for you?
It's just turned 7
in the morning.
Yeah,
isn't that amazing? It's 8 o'clock in the evening here.
Yeah, that's how time zones work. Yeah,
and isn't it amazing how we're able to communicate? So, Steve, thanks. Come on, it's been great talking to you because I think the Great Resignation is such an important thing, and I don't think that it's even started yet. I don't think we understand the in-depth way that people have been impacted by the pandemic.
Oh, no, I think you're right. I think it's a great social change, and it's going to continue. And the pandemic's not over. Let's face it; it's going to keep going for quite some time yet.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Steve, for coming on. Really appreciate it.
No, very much my pleasure.
And it was great to meet you. After how long have we been conversing on social? Like 7 years, 10 years?
10 years, 7 or 8 years at least. Absolutely.
Yeah,
We never actually met face to face
and
before.
we've
So
never met face to face. Isn't that amazing?
It is.
Cheers, Steve. Thanks.
Take care.
And thanks, Jim.